Well, looky who it is. It's you. Happy Monday. Welcome to the School of Shred. This is a show that's designed to help you shred your old and make better your new. Episode 105 coming at you. Coming at you. As you guys jump on, the live audience, I want you guys to throw a flex emoji in the comments. Say what's up, good morning, happy Monday. We're going to talk about fat burn importance today. And I'm going to kind of explain fat burn and why it's important for your body to burn fat. And I'm not just talking about burn body fat. I'm talking about as a fuel source. And we're going to get into that. But the show is here Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Monday through Friday on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. Good morning, good morning, good morning, Michael. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Shred Nation. Keep flexing in the comments here. We're feeling good today. So I figured we would start this week talking about fat burn and the importance of something I've talked about before, which is called metabolic flexibility. So there is a battle that can happen when you have when you're not metabolically flexible. So let's kind of dive in. So what is metabolic flexibility? So if you don't remember the episode that I've done on that in the past, a lot of this stuff is going to be recycled information. I'm going to continue to go over so you start to absorb it more and more. All of the stuff I go over, if you join the School of Shred, if you go to www.theschoolofshred.com and you sign up as a student, this stuff is formulated and packaged in a way that's a little more organized, but you're still getting the goods here. So if you want free stuff, you got over 100 episodes to go back and listen to get value in. But anyway, metabolic flexibility is the ability for your body to go back and forth between burning glucose for fuel, which is what most people burn when they have carbohydrates, lots of protein, things like that. That's going to be the primary fuel source. And then you also have ketones as another way that you can get energy, okay? So ketones are the original fuel source. Carbohydrates and what's really glucose is the preferred energy source, meaning your brain is 2% of your body weight roughly. You might have a little bigger brain. And it takes up 20% of the energy demands in your body. Okay, that's a lot of energy for this brain. And it is very, very greedy when it comes to energy. It needs a lot of energy. So it will go for carbohydrates or glucose. I shouldn't say carbohydrates. I should say glucose because protein can be converted into glucose. But what all carbohydrates and protein, extra protein obviously builds muscle and does a lot of things, builds new hair, skin, nails, all that stuff. But when you have extra protein and you want to convert it into an energy source, it turns into glucose. Okay, so everything is glucose inside of our body, right? Or everything from carbohydrates and protein turns into glucose. But then we also have this other source, which is fat. Fat is ketones. It produces ketones, things like beta hydroxybutyrate, acetoacetate. So those guys are ketones. Those are blood ketones produced by the liver. So if your body can't go back and forth, what happens with this brain that needs energy is the real issue we run into is when our brain cannot use ketones for fuel. When we train our bodies with carbohydrates and protein and all that long-term, with glucose long-term, our brain gets stubborn with the way that it gets its energy. So the interesting thing that it does is it can lead into this thing called hypoglycemia, which ultimately can get you down the rabbit hole and down the road in the path to metabolic syndrome, being diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and pre-diabetes before that, and then insulin resistance before that, and then hypoglycemia here. And so I'm going to talk about kind of what that whole lineage is. And it's when your brain cannot produce energy from fat. So the fat cannot get across the blood-brain barrier and be used for fuel. So what happens in this instance is if your body is only reliant on one fuel source, being glucose, which is a good fuel source, it's good to be flexible. I'm not so certain that I would want to be keto the rest of my life. I'm speaking in terms of being flexible. It means going back and forth. I'll talk about how you can do that here in a little bit. So anyway, if your brain cannot get energy from fat, what happens is it sends every time insulin that's produced in the pancreas is released into the bloodstream, and it shuttles. It's a shuttling nutrient that stores things. So it will store amino acids and carbohydrates as glycogen inside muscles, inside liver as glycogen, and then also in fat tissue. Okay, there's like your three places that you'll store: muscle, liver, I should say it in order: liver, muscle, and then fat. Now, as you get more body fat, your body gets more efficient at storing fat. It's basically you're oversaturating a dry sponge. So what happens is, as soon as the insulin is released, it takes the sugar out of the bloodstream, because you cannot have sugar in the bloodstream. It's a tightly regulated system. Some of the stats on that I've seen is that your body can only have I think it's a gallon of blood can only have 4 grams of sugar at any one time, which is like a very light teaspoon. So it's a tightly regulated system. So when it goes up and it's elevated, your body, your pancreas releases insulin to try and manage this. It's a hormone that manages blood glucose. Okay. And this helps with fat burn, all that good stuff, but it tries to pull it out of the blood. So when it pulls it out of the blood, then you get low blood sugar a lot of the time. Depending on how quickly it rises, there's a overcorrection that could happen where insulin's released and then it pulls all the sugar out of your bloodstream. When it's pulled out of your bloodstream, then your brain goes, hey, I don't have any fuel. So what it does is, via a nerve, the brain will send a signal to your liver that says, hey, dude, you need to make some glucose for me. I'm hungry. I need to operate. I'm 2% of the body weight of this flesh vehicle, but I take up 20% of the energy. So it sends a signal to the liver, the brain does, saying, I need energy, stat, on it, let's go. Your liver then revs up glucose and releases it, okay? But then when that happens, the pancreas starts going, no, we need to keep it regulated. So then it releases insulin. And you can see what's happening here is you're starting to get this battle within your own body where the brain's saying go and the pancreas is saying no. Okay. And this happens when you're not metabolically flexible. Okay. So for instance, what does this look like? This looks like if you can't go for 5 hours without eating a meal because you get shaky, you get cold, you get irritable, you get hangry, that word that people think is funny to use. It's actually a sign that you have poor metabolic health. And so if you're going in between meals and you're starting to feel that dip, you're starting to feel irritable, all of that, what you're feeling is hypoglycemia. And that's because your brain is not able to produce energy in those in-between times because it can't convert over to using ketones at all. It's purely focused on burning glucose. That's all it can do, is burn glucose. You're not flexible. Remember, burning glucose is not bad, but you're not flexible. So you're reliant on another bump, or your body has to create it. So you start to create this hypoglycemia, right? Hypoglycemia, which is where hypoglycemia is low blood sugar. Hypo meaning low, hyper meaning high. So, and you're like, well, that's kind of interesting. How does eating like higher carbohydrates, you think it would be hyperglycemia? You can go from higher glycemia, okay, hyperglycemia, to hypo when your pancreas releases insulin and it stores all of this sugar, okay? And so what happens is over time, you do that over and over and over. The receptor sites start to close their doors to the effects of insulin. So what happens when your body ups insulin production to start storing nutrition and storing nutrients, you're starting to get mildly insulin resistant, where you are resistant to the effects of insulin. You cannot store anymore. So your body combats that by producing more insulin because it has to get the sugar out, but the doors are closing on your cells. You're wearing your body out. This is after hypoglycemia for a prolonged period of time, right? You have your brain and your pancreas fighting long enough that are creating this low blood sugar. And in that war that's going on, you're actually creating insulin resistance because insulin's elevated, and then you're starting to become less and less efficient with the way that your body stores insulin and the effects that it takes on insulin. So then you get into fasting glucose numbers will be higher than they usually are. So that starts to get into maybe pre-diabetic ranges. And then that's the third step along this lineage of over 100. Okay. If you take you prick your finger in the morning and you have a blood glucose that is higher than 100, you are in pre-diabetic zones. as you start to creep up, anything over 125, that's going to be the type 2 diabetic ranges. So this can all be mitigated and helped significantly by being metabolically flexible. Okay, all this stuff that I'm talking about. If it sounds alarming, well, it is, because what it does is it impedes your ability to burn body fat and stay lean. Okay, body fat is a sign of poor metabolic health if it's too high. Okay, it means that your body, you're getting insulin resistant, you're creating hypoglycemia. There's not a timeline on when you could potentially have metabolic syndrome or induce type 2 diabetes on yourself, but I would not recommend going down that road. It is far too common in today's society. And it's because so many people are overweight and obese that we think that it's just normal now. The body is failing. The metabolism is failing. So we can fix a lot of that by getting more metabolically flexible. How do we do this? I'm going to get into that in a second. And so when you become more metabolically flexible and you practice some of this stuff to become more metabolically flexible, again, which is the ability to burn glucose for fuel for the brain or to burn ketones for fuel. So you're not reliant on having snacks every 3 hours. You don't have to eat every 3 hours without getting irritable. You can go for prolonged periods of time. Your body is resilient. And really what it comes down to is now your mitochondria can produce energy efficiently. Okay, so metabolic flexibility prevents metabolic syndrome because you can get fuel from multiple sources. And then this also creates an efficient metabolism. Okay, an efficient metabolism when you can go back and forth between burning fat or burning glucose. What does efficient mean? Efficient is what most people mean when they say fast. That person, so-and-so has a fast metabolism. They stay in shape all the time. They have a fast metabolism. Do you know what you're really saying? It's not just speeding up these chemical reactions in the body. It's that you can take that person or you or whoever that you think has a fast metabolism, they can produce energy efficiently from multiple sources and go back and forth. That's what a fast metabolism is. It's an efficient metabolism. So if you want a fast metabolism to burn body fat, you should focus on creating an efficient metabolism, efficient cellular health. And this is where the gradient we start to get off into maybe the weeds a little bit from what most people are used to, because we start talking about strategy around nutrition. We don't just talk about just dropping calories and continuing to elevate blood glucose all the time and creating this need for purely glucose. Now, remember, glucose is not bad as fuel. It's a great fuel source, but so are ketones. Ketones are an amazing fuel source. You get twice as much fuel from the same amount. So, it makes sense that we would want to go back and forth as well, though. We want to be efficient. We want to take care of our metabolism. We want to be able to burn fat and also burn glucose. Okay. So an efficient metabolism is the fast metabolism. All right. And a fast metabolism we could say it's the rate at which your cells create energy. And what can they create energy from? A slow metabolism is basically like, hey, I need glucose. And so it has to go through this whole process of blood sugars going up and down. You're feeling tired, lethargic. You don't have energy because you're reliant on another little bump of carbohydrates to get through to the next meal. Okay. It's not a healthy metabolism. So to wrap this up here, all this stuff, if you guys are interested in this is what we go over in the School of Shred. So go to theschoolofshred.com. This is what I do for a living. So this will be laid out in an organized manner when you join the school, but I'll give you a couple tips here on how you can increase metabolic flexibility, which is how you can burn fat better. The name of this episode is Fat Burn Importance. So when it comes to burning fat, yes, we're talking about burning body fat, which gives you that nice, sexy body that you want. Of course it does. That's great. But it also creates better brain function. It creates a metabolism that is efficient, that's fast. Okay. And this way, you're also not getting any type of brain inflammation, which can lead to altered leptin signaling, which can stop fat burn. There's all sorts of really interesting stuff that we can get off into. But I'm gonna give you guys a couple tips here. How to burn fat better. You can try a 0-carb breakfast. A 0-carb breakfast. You wake up mildly ketotic. You can try a 0-carb breakfast. We have no carbohydrates. Keep protein actually a little bit low. Get just enough, and then do a very high fat breakfast. Okay. That right there, what you're doing is you're going to feed more ketones in. You're going to ask your body to produce energy from fat through the liver and up ketone production a little bit. When you wake up, you're mildly ketotic. Okay. The second thing is you could try fasting at least once per week. Okay. And the last thing is you can decrease your consumption of vegetable oils. Okay. And that right there, there's a whole segment in the school that we go over about those guys. All right. So it's the School of Shred is all about relearning what health and fitness really is, what holistic health and fitness is, and rediscovering ancestral type techniques. Okay. The old school, what people doing when they had good metabolic health. So we're going to relearn and rediscover together. If you go to theschoolofshred.com and you sign up as a student and join our live classes every week, as well as have your full back office on my membership site where you have tons of videos and weekly assignments to change your life, mental, spiritual, physical, all that good stuff, because they're all related. They cascade out to each other. So that's episode 105, fat burn importance. I hope you guys learned something here today. Fix your fat burn, because your brain needs that fuel. And when your brain can produce energy from both glucose or ketones, you're keeping yourself away from what's called hypoglycemia, which can lead to insulin resistance and then prediabetes and such, and then metabolic syndrome, as well as high blood pressure and lots of other issues that come from altered metabolic health. So fix your fat burn, folks. Fat burn is of the utmost importance. We'll see you tomorrow for episode 106. With that, I want you to stay strong and healthy in body, stay relentless and energized in spirit, and stay determined in your pursuits. That spells shred. Now go shred the day and get better in every way. I'll see you tomorrow.